What's going on, guys? It is the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you an awesome video. The top 5 worst Dinn Corporation wooden coasters. Now, the Dinn Corporation is known for being one of the worst wooden coaster manufacturers of all time, possibly the worst, as I don't really know what other wooden coaster companies besides GCI, RMC, and Dinn and Intamin are worse than the Dinn Corporation, because I know GCI, RMC, and Intamin are way better companies than Dinn, and the Dinn Corporation is no longer operating. And let's move on to the top 5 worst Dinn Corporation wooden coasters. Number 5 is Wolverine Wildcat at Michigan's Adventure. This coaster, other than the front row, every other row is terrible on this coaster. You'll get tons of pain. It's just a really rough coaster. Wolverine Wildcat, there are some airtime hills, but you don't get airtime on them because the ride is so rough, and because this Dinn Corporation wooden coasters are known for being trimmed to death, so that's why this coaster's at number 5. But at least it has a better layout than some of these other Dinn Corporation wooden coasters. Number 4 is Hercules at Dorney Park. This coaster is in a decent layout. It's not bad, but it's not great, because there's a giant turn that's so long on this coaster. Plus, this coaster, due to a sharp turn before or after the first drop, I can't really remember, is probably one of the reasons why it's on this list as one of the worst Dinn Woodies, because it's so rough. Hercules at Dorney Park is known for being a rough wooden coaster, but the good news is it's no longer operating and was replaced by a great B&M floorless coaster called Hydra the Revenge. So I'm happy that this coaster was removed and lived a short life from 1989 to 2003. But overall, this is due to structural issues. This is the reason why it got removed. If it wasn't for structure issues, I think Hercules would still be operating at Dorney Park and probably eventually would have gotten a GCI retrack, but I would rather have Hydra. Number 3 is Psyclone at Magic Mountain. Now, this coaster resided at the current location of Apocalypse, which is a decent GCI wooden coaster. At least that coaster is decent, because this coaster is unbearably rough when it was operating. And in 2006, it was voted the second worst wooden coaster out of 179 wooden coasters. 178 out of 179 wooden coasters out there. That is not good. This coaster was known for being unbearably rough, and due to that, for long periods of time, no one would ride this coaster at all. The only way that the trains would run if there was at least 17 people on the train, which I don't know how many people could have been on the train at a time, but this coaster, unbearably rough coaster, plus it has a kind of like a replica of the Coney Island Psyclone. But let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is the Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. The good news is it was renovated by RMC, and it's the original RMC currently, and it's known for being a super fun ride, and it's known for being super long, overall fun ride. But originally, this was a Dinn Corporation wooden coaster. The Texas Giant, it was just turn after turn after turn. There might be another coaster on this list that's just like that. We'll get to that later. But the Texas Giant, it was one of the largest wooden coasters out there for quite some time until it closed in the late 2000s, by like 2010 or 2009. But the Texas Giant was known for being super rough and not enjoyable at all. I'm guessing with these Dinn Corporation wooden coasters that the front row was okay and then every other row was terrible. This coaster's layout was terrible, and overall, you could consider this the second worst or even the worst Dinn Corporation wooden coaster. Layout-wise, this is the worst layout out of any Dinn Corporation wooden coaster, but at least as an RMC, there's some sweet bank turns instead of boring turns, and there's some cool airtime hills and moments. But number one is Mean Streak at Cedar Point. This coaster is still operating, but it's closing on September 16th of 2016 and could possibly receive the RMC treatment where there's more bank turns, inversions, better airtime moments, everything that makes a wooden coaster a solid RMC. But Mean Streak, this coaster. This is like the coaster that everyone talks about when they talk about the Dinn Corporation and their terrible wooden coasters. They say that Mean Streak is probably the worst coaster they've ridden, or one of the worst. Definitely it's high up there and one of the worst coasters I've ridden. All it is turn after turn after turn. That's all this ride does, is wind around itself and have turns. All this ride is turns. There's a few airtime hills, but there's no airtime on them, obviously, because it's a Dinn Corporation wooden coaster. This ride is super long, which no one wants the ride to be so long if it's a rough ride. If this coaster was glossy smooth, I think that this coaster would be a fun ride, besides the fact that the layout was terrible. But Mean Streak, the good news is it's closing, so lots of people are pretty happy about that. But tons of people want it to be RMC'd. But even if it doesn't get RMC'd, this coaster will go down as one of the worst coasters ever built of all time. And this coaster, I hope it gets RMC'd and becomes possibly the second best, third best, fourth best, or fifth best coaster at Cedar Point. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos.